Okay. Blue-white control video for modern deck tech, sort of. We're going to start with the sideboard for a change of pace. 2 Wandering Emperor, 2 Dress Down, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Summary Dismissal, 2 Archmage's Charm, 3 Dovin's Veto, 1 Stony Silence, 1 Farewell. Covers everything, I think. I don't have Flusterstorms in paper. If I had Flusterstorms in paper, I probably would cut the Archmage's Charms. Okay, main deck, lands, 25 lands, 6 fetches, 4 Flooded Strand, 2 Polluted Delta. We have our 4 duels and 1 try, 3 duels, 1 try, 2 Hollow Fountain, 1 Rogren, 1 Watery Grave to get Prismatic Ending up to 4. I don't care to get it up to 5, it doesn't matter. I like Watery Grave, so that's the one I use, not Breeding Pool. 2 Manlands because of the nature of this deck, 1 Colonnade, 1 Hall of Storm Giants. I know that's standard, but I usually play 4. But this deck doesn't need to do it because it's kind of bypassing the whole thing entirely. 2 Castle Vantress. I don't normally play Castle Vantress, but in this deck, I think it actually is good because we have a combo. It's Days Undoing. This is my version of blue-white Days Undoing. Other dual lands. 1 Mystic Gate, 3 Glacial Fortress. And then we have the 7 basics. 5 Island, 2 Plains. I will never play fewer than 2 Plains. Okay, removal. 4 Prismatic Ending, mandatory. 4 March of Otherworldly Light, because I like it a lot. I think it's good in this deck. 4 Solitude. I sold out. I bought Solitudes. It's pretty good, especially in this deck. 3 Supreme Verdict, still. Okay, so that's like, 15 removal spells, but 4 of those are a creature. That's pretty good. 7 counter spells, 4 actual counter spell, 3 Force of Negation. Why Force of Negation? We're kind of tap out control, and this protects us from, things that we care about. Creatures we don't really give a shit about. This protects us from non-creatures. Can protect the planeswalkers, and I just prefer to play this one. Archmage's Charm in this deck is too clunky because of the 4 copies of Little Teferi, the main guy, 4 copies of Narset, 2 Big Teferi, that's our 10 Planeswalkers. So Narset's pretty good. 2 copies of Days Undoing for the combo, and then 2 Memory Deluge to help find the combo some more. And just be good card advantage. So, yeah. Deck hauls ass. Like, it's pretty good. Basically, you just want to make sure you have a Prismatic Ending or March in the opening hand, and you're good to go. You just kind of smack everything. It's nice to play the control deck that has a fuck you, I win combo, basically. And yeah, I've not lost a game where I've resolved this with an Narset in play. Just have not lost it. The best part is when you have Little Teferi as well, and you uptick with a Narset, and then you Days Undoing in the draw step, and then they don't get anything. I've never lost a single game where that's gone off. So that's good, and it goes off pretty well. Most decks don't interact all that much with you, at least not in a way that would be good against this. So it's pretty good against Jund, and I think Jund is probably the most interactive deck that, because it's the kind of interaction that really can beat up a deck like this. Because against Murktide, if you just resolve Little Teferi, you just kind of win anyway, and then you can kind of go off with the Days Undoing and the Narset. Jund has the discard spells and the early pressure, and if a deck like this can beat the shit out of Jund a good bit of the time, then I would say it's pretty well equipped to deal with most interactive decks that are going to try to fight your combo kill. I had 3 March initially. I went to 4 because Urza's Saga is a pain in the ass. Or it can be. So we got 4 March. This is a 61 card deck, by the way, because I didn't want to cut the second Deluge. So 61 cards, but they're all good. None of the cards are bad. Narset's really good against 4 color. Pretty much just fucking stops them unless they get the Risen Reef down. That's a pain, but it stops everything else. The combo's good against them. They don't really play counter spells. And they're a slow deck in general, and this deck kind of beats the shit out of those types of decks. So yeah. Another reason I like the Force of Negations is Tron. If you happen to go against Tron, you can pitch a Supreme Verdict or something, and then you force the Karn, and then you can kind of set up. They're not going to interact with you. And then once you hit them with Days Undoing, the game's kind of over for the most part. Sideboard is to address bad matchups. 2 Wandering Emperor because it's generically good. I also want to have like a transitional plan if the combo is bad or I just don't want to play it. I can bring in Wandering Emperor, The 2 Archmage's Charm, and then the Vetoes. So against other control decks, you can cut some dead removal as well. So that's 7 cards you can bring in. A couple of Dress Down, because I think it's a decent sideboard card. I don't think it's worth playing in the main deck for this deck, so I don't do it. 2 Rest in Peace for Living End and any other graveyard decks. Yeah, that hurts us a lot, but it hurts them more, so that's another reason we have other cards like Wandering Emperor. If we cut it the Days Undoing, we can just kind of side into a more normal control deck. Summary Dismissal for Tron and Titan. Like I said, Archmage's Charm, just kind of there. Why not? It's a good card. I like Archmage's Charm. It's just clunky in this deck. And it doesn't fit this deck as well as it does other decks. 3 Vetoes for reasons. Stony Silence for affinity. Farewell for affinity. Creature decks, graveyard decks, enchantment decks, whatever. I just like the card. I think it's worth playing as one of. I'd rather, have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It's the type of card I think it is. And that Seb McKinnon art is fucking perfect. But yeah, that's the Days Undoing list. It's a little bit different than the couple of people I've seen play it. Or I've seen lists from anyway. But that's my version of it. Chalice of the Void's a good one to add here as well. I've never had a need for them in paper, so I never bought them. But I would cut the Archmage's Charms, actually. I said for Flusterstorm, but I would cut the 2 Archmage's Charm for Chalice. And then I don't even know if I would play Flusterstorm at that point, because then against Living End, you just counter Living End with Veto and they can't do anything about it. Or Violent. Well, you don't want to counter Violent Outburst, but Living End. And then Chalice would help against the Cascade decks too. So that's probably what you do. And you maybe play a 3rd copy of Chalice and maybe cut one of the Vetoes, actually. Might be the correct play. But luckily, those decks aren't too popular where I play. So, and by not too popular, I mean Teamer Rhinos is, but Living End, thankfully, not so much. I don't know how that matchup would be. But everybody says Blue-White has a good Living End matchup, so I don't know. It's good against Rhinos, though. Rhinos is really not a problematic deck. They're just getting a couple of 4/4s on turn 3. It's really not that big of a deal. Living End's the problem. And then this deck is beating up everything else. It beats up 4-color. Unless they have a really good start and just kind of, can smoke you and you draw terribly. It's pretty good against them. It's good against Murktide, but I think almost any version of Blue-White is going to be good against Murktide. And then, like I said, it beats up Jund, and in my experience, decks like these are most fragile to decks like Jund. And this beats up Jund pretty good, so, yeah. Just more like a tap-out style, play to the board control deck. Kill everything that breathes. Normally you wouldn't want to play 15 removal spells, but because 8 of them literally hit anything else, you can get away with playing 15 removal spells. Because only 7 of them are specifically for creatures, which is pretty cool. So yeah, Prismatic Ending and March for the Royal are great. There's lots of artifacts and enchantments that you'll want to hit, so perfect. And then this hits literally everything else, so yeah. I like it. Little Teferi, best Planeswalker, arguably, besides Ren and 6 in the format. You need him to shut down the Cascade decks because they're way too goddamn powerful as it is. And the people calling for a Little Teferi to be banned are just insane. So, yeah. And then Narset. Also, it slows down Living End because they can't cycle multiple cards. They got to do it one at a time. So that can actually buy you a little bit of time, which is nice. But yeah, her static is not as good as it used to be. But that's not why we play her. We play her for the Days Undoing, fuck you, I win combo. So yeah, that's Blue-White Days Undoing. Narset's one of my favorite Planeswalkers personally, so I like playing it. And then 2 Big Teferi. I've seen versions with Jace. And yeah, once you pop off with Days Undoing, Jace can end the game really quickly. But Teferi's better in general. So I played Teferi. This has been my main Planeswalker since 2018. Before Jace. So, yeah. If I have to choose between the 2 top-end Planeswalkers, it's Teferi every time. And then Wandering Emperor doesn't fit the deck at all, the main deck. So that's why she's in the sideboard. But it's pretty good. And I've been happy with this build of the deck, so you should give it a shot. You don't have to play Snowlands. I just like those Kaldheim Snowlands. Peace.